In the mountains northeast of Los Angeles, several children disappeared within a few years of each other. They were young, some as young as 6. They vanished quickly, often within moments of being seen by the adults closest to them. Massive search operations followed each disappearance. Hundreds of volunteers, law enforcement officers, tracking dogs, and aircraft combed the terrain. What little evidence was found raised more questions than it answered. Clues surfaced in the wrong places at the wrong times. Strange letters arrived after the fact, and the searches, some of the largest ever mounted in the region, kept coming back empty. These are their stories. The Forest of Vanishing Children. Among the many unsolved mysteries of the United States, or even around the world, few are as unsettling as the disappearances that occurred in and around California's Angeles National Forest during the 1950s and early 1960s. Over a period of only a few years, several children vanished under circumstances so strange that the region eventually became known in paranormal and mystery literature as the Forest of Vanishing Children. While this title was not used by law enforcement at the time, it reflects the fear and fascination these cases continue to inspire decades later. Located northeast of Los Angeles, Angeles National Forest covers hundreds of square miles of rugged mountains, deep canyons, dense vegetation, and isolated wilderness. To most visitors, it is a place of hiking, camping, fishing, and recreation. Yet hidden beneath its scenic beauty is a series of disappearances that have never been fully explained. The victims were children who vanished within minutes, often while adults were nearby. Massive searches involving police, volunteers, tracking dogs, aircraft, and even military personnel produced almost no evidence. Bodies were never recovered, clues were scarce, and the cases remain unsolved to this day. Donald Baker and Brenda Howell. The disappearances began in the summer of 1956 when 2 children decided to go for a ride on their bicycles. On the morning of August 5, 1956, 13-year-old Donald Baker and 11-year-old Brenda Howell set off on their bicycles to explore the San Gabriel Canyon area near Angeles National Forest. Brenda was visiting California from North Carolina and had befriended Donald during her stay. Like many children of the era, they were given considerable freedom and intended only to spend a few hours exploring before returning home. They never came back. When the children failed to return, concern quickly turned into alarm. Law enforcement agencies organized a large-scale search. Volunteers combed the hillsides and canyons. Search teams checked abandoned cabins and fire roads. Divers searched nearby reservoirs. The United States Navy even assisted in the operation. Despite these efforts, investigators found remarkably little evidence. Brenda's bicycle was eventually discovered abandoned near the Morris Dam area. Donald's jacket was found hidden in brush nearby. These discoveries suggested that the children had reached the area, but they provided no explanation for what had happened next. Months later, another puzzling development occurred when Donald's bicycle suddenly appeared at a local school. A student claimed to have found it in the forest on the day of the disappearance. Whether this story was true or not was never determined. The disappearance baffled investigators. 2 children had vanished together in daylight. No witnesses reported suspicious activity. No signs of violence were discovered. No remains were ever found. As the years passed, the case became one of California's most enduring mysteries. At the time, few people realized this would be only the first in a series of similar disappearances. If you're enjoying this video, don't forget to hit like. It really helps to keep the channel growing. And if you're new here, subscribe and tap the bell icon so you never miss our latest videos. We've got lots of strange and fascinating stories coming up, and we'd love to have you along for the journey. Tommy Bowman. In less than a year, another tragedy would occur when on March the 23rd, 1957, 8-year-old Tommy Bowman joined family members on a hike in the Arroyo Seco region near Devil's Gate. According to reports, Tommy ran ahead on the trail, eager to reach a clearing before the others. He disappeared around a bend in the path and briefly moved out of sight. Moments later, the adults rounded the same corner, expecting to find him just ahead. But Tommy had completely vanished. Initially, family members assumed he was hiding or had continued farther down the trail. However, as minutes passed, concern mounted. A search began almost immediately. Within hours, the area was crowded with deputies, volunteers, mounted search teams, tracking dogs, and helicopters. Hundreds of people participated in the operation. Searchers spent days combing the rugged terrain. Yet despite the speed with which the search began, no trace of Tommy could be found. The circumstances were particularly disturbing because of the extremely short time involved. Tommy had not been alone for hours. He had not wandered miles from camp. He disappeared within moments of being seen. To many observers, this seemed almost impossible. Even if he had become lost, searchers believed they should have found some indication of where he had gone. Instead, it was as though he had vanished into thin air. Adding to the mystery, reports later surfaced that the Bowman family received a strange letter claiming Tommy was alive and in the company of an unidentified adult male. Investigators followed the lead but were unable to verify the claim. The letter ultimately led nowhere. Tommy Bowman was never found or seen again. Bruce Kremen. 3 years later, tragedy would strike once again when on July the 12th, 1960, 6-year-old Bruce Kremen attended a YMCA summer camp in Angeles National Forest. Approximately 80 children and adults were present. During a hike near Buckhorn Flat, Bruce became tired and lagged behind the group. Because the campsite was nearby and visible, supervisors allowed him to return while they continued along the trail. Witnesses later reported that he was only a short distance from camp when they last saw him. When Bruce failed to arrive, camp staff quickly realized something was wrong. The alarm was raised almost immediately, and another major search operation was launched. Hundreds of volunteers joined law enforcement officers in combing the mountainous terrain. Aircraft searched from above. Teams explored ravines, cliffs, and canyons. Yet, just as in the earlier disappearances, there was no sign of the missing child. Authorities initially believed Bruce might have become injured or lost in the rugged wilderness. However, the complete absence of evidence made the case increasingly difficult to explain. No clothing, footprints, or remains were found. Bruce simply disappeared. His disappearance strengthened the growing belief where they came to the realization that something extremely unusual was happening in the region. By the early 1960s, local residents had begun noticing a disturbing pattern. Several children had vanished within a relatively small geographic area. Each case involved a sudden disappearance. Each triggered extensive search efforts. Each produced few clues, and in each instance, the child was never found. Over time, writers, researchers, and paranormal investigators grouped these cases together and began referring to the region as the Forest of Disappearing Children, or the Forest of Vanishing Children. Although the cases did not all occur at the exact same location, they were connected by geography, timing, and the remarkable similarities in their circumstances. As the years passed, the mystery expanded beyond law enforcement investigations and entered the realm of folklore. The disappearances became the subject of books, articles, documentaries, podcasts, and paranormal discussions. New theories emerged, some plausible and others highly speculative. One possible explanation emerged in 1970 when convicted child murderer Mac Ray Edwards confessed to a series of crimes involving children. Edwards was a California construction worker who admitted to murdering multiple children between the 1950s and 1970. During his confessions, he claimed responsibility for the disappearances of Donald Baker and Brenda Howell. Authorities investigated his statements seriously because portions of his confession matched known facts from other crimes. However, significant problems emerged. When Edwards directed investigators to burial sites, no bodies were found. Some of his statements appeared contradictory. At one point, he recanted parts of his confession and claimed another individual was responsible. Before the matter could be fully resolved, Edwards took his own life while awaiting execution. Many investigators nevertheless suspect that Edwards may have been involved in at least some of the disappearances. Modern missing person organisations continue to list him as a likely suspect in several of the cases. Yet because no bodies were recovered and no definitive evidence linked him directly to the crimes, the mystery remains unresolved. Paranormal explanations. The lack of answers inevitably encouraged more unusual theories. Some researchers have suggested that the forest is a hotspot for unexplained phenomena. Stories of strange lights, ghostly figures, mysterious creatures, and occult activity have circulated throughout the region for decades. Paranormal investigators have proposed explanations ranging from Bigfoot encounters to dimensional portals and extraterrestrial abductions. Supporters of these theories point to the unusual circumstances surrounding the disappearances. They note how quickly the children vanished and how little evidence was left behind. In some accounts, the timing seems so brief that a conventional abduction appears difficult to imagine. However, there is no physical evidence supporting supernatural explanations. While such theories remain popular in books and documentaries, they are generally not accepted by professional investigators. With most people wanting to discredit any talk of paranormal activity, many experts believe the answer may be less mysterious, though no less tragic. Angeles National Forest contains steep slopes, hidden ravines, dense vegetation, and dangerous terrain. A small child can disappear from view in seconds. Search and rescue professionals often note that people underestimate how difficult it can be to locate someone in wilderness environments. Even extensive searches can fail if an individual falls into an inaccessible area and they had to come to the conclusion of the harsh reality of the wilderness. Others argue that a predator operating in the area could explain the pattern. A determined offender familiar with the terrain might have been capable of abducting children quickly and concealing evidence effectively. The later confessions of Mac Ray Edwards lend some support to this possibility, although they do not conclusively solve the cases. Unfortunately, the passage of time makes definitive answers increasingly unlikely. So, what do we make of the mysterious vanishings? And after 70 years since the first disappearance, the mystery of California's forest of vanishing children remains unsolved. Donald Baker and Brenda Howell vanished during a bicycle ride in 1956. Tommy Bowman disappeared while hiking with family in 1957. Bruce Kremen vanished near a crowded summer camp in 1960. Despite massive search efforts, none of them were ever found. Theories range from serial killers to wilderness accidents to the paranormal. Yet no explanation has ever fully accounted for the facts. What remains is a haunting series of cases that continue to fascinate researchers and mystery enthusiasts alike. The forests and mountains of Southern California still attract millions of visitors every year. Most experience nothing more mysterious than beautiful scenery and quiet wilderness. Yet hidden within that landscape is the memory of several children who walked, rode, or wandered into the forest and were never seen again. Their stories end not with answers, but with silence. shared by the tortured souls of parents who never learned what happened to their children. For almost 100 years, the Bennington Triangle has been linked to an eerie string of missing persons cases. The area itself is a densely wooded patch of land in southwestern Vermont. The triangle spans a large stretch of wilderness that includes the town of Bennington. Between 1945 and 1950, 5 individuals vanished from the triangle, never to be seen again, initially prompting speculation that a serial killer could be at work. Accusations also pointed at everything from satanic cults to Bigfoot. The area has also been a hotspot for paranormal investigators. The Wilderness Trail had become a popular hiker's destination since its opening. However, starting in 1945, these vanishings had caused many to speculate a supernatural intervention. There would no doubt be a rational reason for all of these disappearances, but you must admit the manner in which most of them just vanished without a trace is quite chilling. The following are 5 mysterious stories about the people who disappeared between 1945 and 1950. Number 5. Mitty Rivers. 74-year-old Mitty Rivers was the first of a series of people to disappear in the Bennington Triangle on November 12, 1945, while out hunting. Rivers was guiding a group of 4 hunters up the mountains. On the way back, Rivers got ahead of the group and was never seen again. It was a local area that he was familiar with, so it felt as though there was little to suggest he'd got lost. An extensive search was conducted, but the only evidence discovered was a single rifle cartridge that was found in a stream. The speculation was that Rivers had leaned over and the cartridge had dropped out of his pocket into the water. The disappearance had occurred in the Long Trail Road area and Vermont Route 9. Rivers was an experienced hunter and fisherman and was familiar with the local area, which makes his disappearance even more mysterious. Number 4. Paula Weldon. Paula Jean Weldon, 18, disappeared about a year later on December 1st, 1946. Weldon was a sophomore at Bennington College. She had set out for a hike on the Long Trail. Many saw her go, including Ernest Whitman, a Bennington Banner employee who gave her directions. When the college couldn't locate Paula, they called the local sheriff. She was alleged to have been seen on the trail itself by an elderly couple who were about 100 yards behind her. According to them, she turned a corner in the trail, and when they reached the same corner, she had disappeared. Gossip about her disappearance soon ran wild throughout the campus and small community, including suicide, amnesia, and murder. The college officially closed for several days so that students and professors could help look for Paula. After more time had passed, a more extensive search was then conducted, which included the posting of a $5,000 reward and help from the FBI. But they found nothing significant. Then a waitress in Fall River, Massachusetts, claimed to have served dinner to a disturbed woman fitting Paula's description. Strangely, after hearing this, Mr. Weldon vanished for 36 hours. After his return, people began to suspect that he had something to do with his daughter's disappearance. It came to light that Mr. Weldon did not approve of a boy Paula had been seeing. He claimed this boyfriend had to be the responsible party, but his only proof came from a clairvoyant. He then began to criticize the police for their lack of professionalism and lack of records. Firefighters and the National Guard eventually joined the search. However, no evidence of her was ever found. While rumours now speculated that she had moved to Canada with a boyfriend or that she became a recluse living in the mountains. The search continued, but nobody had ever found Paula or her remains. Number 3. James Tedford. In 1949, James E. Tedford was the 3rd person to disappear. Tedford was born around 1884 in Vermont, but not much is known about his early life. In 1940, he was resident in Fletchertown, Franklin, Vermont, with his younger wife Pearl, who was 28 and he was 56. Things started to go wrong for Tedford when he returned home to Vermont at the end of his second spell of military service at the end of World War II, to find that his wife, Pearl, had vanished. No trace of her could be found, and the property they rented in Fletchertown had been left abandoned. Tedford's family claimed no knowledge of the whereabouts of his missing wife, and they said that they'd last seen her as she was heading to the Amigo store in Franklin, but they never saw her again. Tedford later became a resident at the Bennington Soldiers' Home and had been in St Albans visiting relatives. He was returning home on the local bus to the Soldiers' Home when he vanished. According to witnesses, Tedford got on the bus and was still on the bus at the last stop before arriving in Bennington. He was, according to witnesses, on the last stop before his destination. Somewhere between the last stop and Bennington, Tedford vanished. His belongings were still in the luggage rack, and an open bus timetable was on his vacant seat. None of the other passengers and the bus driver claimed that he ever got off the bus. He simply vanished into thin air. On December the 1st, 1949, Tedford's remaining family reported him missing, exactly 3 years after his wife Pearl had disappeared. Number 2. Paul Jepson. On October the 12th, 1950, 8-year-old Paul Jepson became another victim of the Bennington Black Hole, and the fourth person to vanish. Jepson's parents were caretakers at a rubbish tip. The young boy had accompanied his mother in a truck. She left her son alone to attend to some duties and was gone for about an hour. When she returned, her son was nowhere in sight. Search parties were formed to look for the child, and in keeping with the strange stories of the Bennington Triangle, the boy's father told the Albany Times-Union that it was perhaps the lure of the mountains that pulled in his missing son, as the boy had talked of nothing else for days prior to the disappearance. His father claims that the boy had a strange yen to go into the mountains. Although Paul was wearing a red jacket, which would have made him more visible, intensive search parties found nothing. In addition to the hundreds assembled for a search party, a New Hampshire sheriff brought in a bloodhound to help search for the missing boy. The dog was able to pick up his scent, but abruptly lost the trail at a nearby crossroads, suggesting a possible abduction by a motorist. Whatever the case, Paul Jepson was another person to vanish into thin air. Number 1. Frida Langer. The fifth and last disappearance occurred 16 days after Jepson had vanished. On October 28, 1950, Frida Langer, 53, and her cousin Herbert Elsner left their family campsite near the Somerset Reservoir to go on a hike. During the hike, Langer slipped and fell into a stream. She told Elsner if he would wait, she would go back to the campsite, change clothes, and catch up to him. Frida is said to have been quite familiar with the area, and the camping site was only a few hundred meters from the stream into which she is said to have fallen. When she did not return, Elsner made his way back to the campsite and discovered Langer had not returned, and that nobody had seen her since they had left to go hiking. Over the next 2 weeks, 5 searches were conducted involving aircraft and helicopters. No trace of Langer was found during the search. On May the 12th, 1951, 7 months after her disappearance, the corpse of Frida Langer suddenly appeared near Somerset Reservoir in the open, easily visible part of the forest that the hundreds of searchers could not possibly have overlooked, an extensive scouring of the woods 7 months previously. No cause of death could be determined because of the condition of her remains, and exposure to the elements had left the corpse in such a condition as to render detection of violence or any kind of clue to Mrs. Langer's fate virtually impossible. Langer was the last person to disappear and the only one whose body was found. Was Frida Langer another victim of the Bennington Triangle?